Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. I greet you live from the All America city of Morrisville in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the United States of America. And on this show, we talk about global affairs, innovation, an increasingly divisive and turbulent world in the midst of war and political division and nationalism, the likes of which we have not seen in decades in the United States and around the world. Today, we want to talk about a few things, and then I'll give you my final insights. The war in Ukraine, many say, is at a turning point. It's in its 8th month now. It's rapidly escalated after a period of little change on either side. Russia launched strikes yesterday in a dozen Ukrainian cities, killing 19 people and injuring more than 100. And the escalation continues to rise. And as we discussed yesterday, the attack on the Crimea Bridge could be a significant blow to Russia, cutting off a major supply line and sending Putin a message that we are in this to win it. Will the United States do more? President Biden has pledged more money. We'll talk about that. But there's also a fear of the use of nuclear weapons. How serious is it? And should we all be concerned? While we work on talking about the division in Ukraine, we now see that the protests in Iran continue as a 22-year-old girl was killed, beaten to death by Iranian security forces for her hairstyle. It's an anti-government uprising in its 4th week. At least 52 people have been killed. The presidents of LA City Council, Nuri Martinez, the first Latina to hold the position, has resigned because of racist remarks she made about a colleague. And hackers have taken down a handful of U.S. airport websites yesterday. Find it ironic that's happened as we are in the middle of Cybersecurity Awareness Month. My final point is to talk about this elections, which is now a month away. At stake in these elections in the United States are every seat in the United States House of Representatives and 34 seats in the United States Senate. Republicans can take the majority from Democrats by flipping 5 seats in the House and 1 in the Senate. Raphael Warnock in Georgia is in the fight of his life against Herschel Walker, who has his set of challenges too with his paying for an abortion. Across the United States, 36 governors and thousands of state and local offices are on the ballot. And so today we're going to begin our countdown to the election, and we're going to talk about the economy, abortion, inflation, and what are the issues that will drive Democrats, Republicans, and yes, the famous word swing voters, those undecided voters who haven't really decided. And in North Carolina, there are more undecided, unaffiliated voters than there are Republicans and Democrats. The gap is narrowing, and we will discuss what we predict in the crystal ball for our President Joe Biden and his party in less than a month. Now let's get started. Today we have with us my co-producer, I call him the Wizard of Oz, Mark Lee, the guy behind the curtain, making it all work. Chris Greco, our foreign policy and military analyst. Nick Paladiva, the owner of our network and founder. And we will be joined with others as well. This is my lineup team. I'm proud to be the quarterback. Let's get started.
Speaking of getting started, I got a quick question for you. And maybe Chris has got some thoughts on this as well. You know, we're in the middle of this war. So far, we've avoided being directly involved in some way, even though there's a lot of finances that are out there. And of course, I do know that there are, of course, advisors and other folks that are definitely helping the Ukrainian side. And a lot of people are spending money to make sure that Ukraine wins and all of that. But apparently, some pro-Russian hackers have taken credit for a cyber attack on the U.S. airport. And that happened earlier today, and NPR reported that. So major U.S. airport websites went offline in an apparent cyber attack. So, Chris, you're in the cyber attack and cybersecurity field. Is this something that we can expect from the Russians and Mr. Putin? Are they going to try to pull us in by having their allies and pro hackers and all of that try to take out our airports? And who knows what else they might try to take out as well, because this is the first time. I mean, of course, we know that there was allegations of hacking in the election system that was tied into Russia as well. But apparently, maybe they're going after O'Hara or Dulles or some of the other large airports. I have to figure out which ones they did hit, but it does look like they hit some airports. And, we are getting back to more and more people traveling around. And it definitely, the airports is how business folks as well as just regular citizens get about quite often. So what is our take on this, and do we need to be worried about it?
Oh yeah. I'm not even an expert hacker, Mark. I'm not an expert hacker, but I'm telling you right now that I could get into airports, I could get into police stations, I could get into cars, I get into hospitals. It is so easy hacking into these things. And it's so funny that we sit back and we think that we are just invulnerable. And it's really hilarious.
And that's one thing I don't talk enough about as we do go into smart cities and IoT. By the way, we will bring NC Riot back. They've got a big startup pitch fest on November 1st. But as we open up IoT, we're vulnerable to cyber attack. Right.
Well, so here's a study I did, and this is interesting, Steve and Mark. No, this is not a different study. So yeah, and that's another study. The study I did that is on the Data Show. In fact, if people want to go to the Data Show, they can go to the Data Show. I do have a show there, and on Roku TV, Pod TV, Amazon Fire. Basically, what it is it was talking about the number of people that watch CNN. And what they did was they paid people from Fox that were watching Fox to actually, they paid them like $15 or whatever it was a shot to watch CNN and then take a survey as to, what they thought about Fox and then what they thought about CNN and what they thought about Trump and, democracy, blah, 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 goes on and on. Well, the study was interesting. My brother and I talked about that. But what we really talked about was how did they get the data to be able to determine if a person was Republican or Democrat watching Fox? And the way they did it was when you do streaming like Roku, sorry, Roku, but you do it. When you do streaming, basically, you release information that you say, basically, as long as I'm streaming Roku, you can collect whatever data you want. So that means you can collect my address. You can collect my name. You can collect you can even collect credit card numbers, which they do. And anything that they have, they took the names and the addresses and they took those and put those up against voter registration for that specific state that they were streaming from. And that's how they got whether they were Republican or Democrat. Now, folks, let me tell you something. If you want to put Echo and Alexa and whatever else you want in your house, you are basically having an open mic. I don't give a crap if they say you can disarm it or whatever else happens. And airports are extremely bad about that. They do not have the security that they need to have.
And just to let folks know what the group was, Mark, just to let folks give a little bit further notice and everything, and apparently there was no impact on the flight operations yet, but they did say a pro-Russian hacker group is taking credit for temporarily taking down several U.S. airport websites on Monday, though there appeared to be no impact on flight operations. The cyber attack claimed by Killnet, gotta love that name, impacted the websites for Los Angeles International, Chicago O'Hare, and I was just guessing Chicago when I said that, and Hartsfield Jackson International in Atlanta, among others. And the group posted a list of airports on Telegram. Yeah, they were using Telegram to tell folks what they were doing, urging hackers to participate in what's known as DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service caused when
domain denial of service. That's what it stands for.
Caused when a computer network is flooded by simultaneous data transmissions. And the group's call to actions included airports across the country, including Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, and Missouri. You'll be glad to know, Nick, they did not decide to hit North Carolina, at least not yet.
Let me tell you, Mark. Let me tell you. Let's just talk about DDoS, just real quick.
Please. And then let's go to Ukraine real quickly after.
That's right. So cybersecurity. Here's how it works: deceive, deny, destroy. Those are those 3Ds. We used them in counterintelligence. That's what you use them. Deceive, you try to deceive the individual so that they can go to your site rather than another site. That's what hackers try to do. That's hence the, the false flag type aspects and all that. Deny, which is the DDoS. The DDoS basically overloads the system so that nobody can do anything. It just, and let me tell you, they do it. They've done it on cell phones. They've done it in different areas, and basically, it just denies everybody access to what's going on. This destroy is what they did to the bridge. You can't really deceive, deny, destroy the bridge, right? So what they did to the Kerch Bridge was they said, well, we can't deceive that. We can't deny them using it without destroying it. So we're just going to destroy it. So that's that third D that goes on with that. And that's, and Steve, you mentioned this morning about Ukraine, and Ivan said it best. He said, basically what happened is, I said, Ivan, I know you don't really want to release, the classified information type things because I get it, Intel, but what do you think happened? Type thing, you can either confirm or deny. He says, well, the way that I think it happened was that I think they had a truck, and the invoice on the truck was basically a bunch of agricultural stuff, but really it was loaded with bombs. And then they bribed the guy at the bridge to let the truck on. The truck went over, and it just so happened that when they detonated the truck, a train carrying fuel was passing by the truck. Now, it was all coincidental, and it just blew up. So it just blew up in this gigantic fireball because the train went up and everything else. So I sit back and I go, man, Putin must have been pissed. He spent 3 years putting that bridge together and opening it up, being at the opening and everything else. And he starts slamming. You know that you have hit a nerve whenever they start firing 80 missiles. But from what I've heard, and I'm trying to confirm this, out of the 80 missiles fired from the Russians, 45 impacted. 45. So a little bit more than half of the missiles fired. I think it was a counter. I think what was happening is Patriot missiles are much better better generation.
So we're 8 months into the war. Let's talk about Ukraine, and then we're going to go right into the elections a little bit, and then talk about some of these other things. But 8 months into the war, you saw the Russian attacks, 19 dead, 100 injured.
We'll go through the dance deal.
And then you've got 19 killed, 100 injured. But then you got the Crimea Bridge explosion. So was that at this point in time, Chris, is Russia in more danger now of losing, or is it now Putin is?
Can I ask a follow-up question to that to go with what you're getting ready to answer, Chris, and everything? Because I'm wondering, if we go back in history, and I was actually going to pop in and ask Ivan the same question, but if you go back in history, when a war projects and lasts a long time, there becomes I won't say a loss of interest, but there becomes kind of a frustration among the general public. What happens is that people are definitely gung-ho when the war first starts. They're always definitely behind whoever is seen as being the more just side of the war and supporting them. But then after a while, you get what is considered war weary. And I think that's what happened in Vietnam and everything. And there will come a protest. And I'm thinking definitely in Russia, and we know that there are protests in Russia, but I'm thinking even in Europe, there will be protests against the war. And I'm just wondering, is that a concern that people have, that folks might get overly frustrated and that there might be a rise in anti-war sentiment? And if that happens, will that make the war last potentially longer? Because like I said, I use the history of the Vietnam War, but we can go back to some of the other wars as well. So Chris, and I think maybe Sasha has joined or somebody else has joined as well. I just wanted your take as a military expert, because I do know that I've heard that there are protests, not just in Russia, but in Europe, just against the war in general.
Yeah. So just watched the news this morning. I try to keep up on it as much as currently possible. Lukashenko over in Belarus, he has stated unequivocally that if Ukraine sets one foot in Ukraine, in Belarus, that they will defend vigorously their country's autonomy and whatever else has to go on. So remember when I said that what's going to happen is Ukraine is going to be pushing east, and all of a sudden you got Belarus right above there, very close to Kyiv. And And I'll tell you what's going to happen is, Steve, you talk about Putin being pushed into a corner. I think what's going to happen is Putin is definitely losing the war. I mean, it's very evident that he's losing the war. Manpower and morale, time, treasure, time, talent, treasure are all gone. I mean, he just put in a new guy who's just a bloodthirsty barbarian nut, that was in Syria. So he's going to start just taking blood, wherever he's going to just start killing, wherever he can kill, and then
what about the threat of nuclear war? Oh, we have Sasha, the expert. Well, Sasha, we know you got your show, but real quickly, we're trying to evaluate right now, winning or losing. Although Russia was just attacked, 100 people, 100 people injured, 19 killed. Yesterday we talked about the Crimea Bridge. So right now, with 8 months in, who is winning and who is losing this war?
First of all, let me address the idea of some people that they are against the war. What means to be against the war? In a war, you have two parties, one and another, and they both have to be guilty of conducting war if you are against the war. Is it right? Because if only one party is guilty, 100%, another one is 0, and you're against the war, then you are against the party that started the war in the first place, which means 100% to be against Russia in this case. So the all attempts to talk about peace, they are could get only from people who basically have no logical thinking, no brains, no facilities to understand what's really happening, or their lack of understanding what's happening. Or in case of Elon Musk, he just scared as death of nuclear war, because then he with his well over $200 billion, if I'm correct, has just the same chances to be killed as somebody who cannot find $400 to scrap together if he needs it. And this, he believes, is a great injustice. And somehow he wants to escape that injustice by maybe flying to Mars, maybe do something else, and let him do it. He has means to do it. Why not? Now, speaking about the idea of nuclear war, Putin can't do it. He will lose the war, he will be killed instantly, and he will not achieve anything. Yeah, there will be, of course, a lot of deaths. Maybe it's been estimated that about 100 to 150 million people will be killed in the all-out nuclear exchange. Again, I don't want to be in a position to verify whether it's the right number or not. I really don't need that. But even tactical nuclear device, he's not capable of doing that. Most of it for purely technical reasons. That the device has to be get out of the facilities where it's kept. It has to be put on some truck or train or somewhere to be delivered. And then it has to be delivered, it has to be assembled to the certain warhead or something somewhere else. And then it has to be fired. And there are no guarantees that it will even get to this, to its target. It could explode right at the point where it's being fired from. So if Putin already did the horrible mistake by starting this war, because he exposed to all world what kind of so-called second strongest army in the world he has. No longer, it's gone. It's history now. So the same thing will happen now with the nuclear device, even tactical nuclear device or whatever. So then people will start to laugh. Putin will become a clown. He will be invited in a circus to perform, because that's all what he is. He's a funny little clown. That's what Putin is. Okay, that's the end of story.
Well, and I think, it might be premature to talk about what's going to happen in a post-Putin Russia if he is taken out. But I think it's still too early, premature for that.
Well,
but,
the devil you know versus the devil you don't know, right? I mean, yeah, somebody kills Putin, a person could walk in there that's worse than Putin. Now, who could be worse than Putin? I don't know, but there's always somebody who's gonna just push the envelope. But as Sasha says, Putin is going to leave the next person, whoever that may be, with basically a shell of an army, a shell of a military, shell of morale, shell of pretty much everything else.
Shell of economy.
Shell of a country, basically, is what's going to happen. So then that person's going to walk in there and they're going to be like this lame duck, literally and figuratively, where they're just sitting there wondering, how much money can I get into my Swiss bank account before I have to leave forcibly? It's going to be, and I'll tell you, there's going to be a revolution. If that's the situation, there'll be a revolution in Russia that will make 1917 look like it was, a day at the park. I mean, there's going to be a lot of bloodshed in Russia, and Ukraine's going to be sitting back just laughing their butts off, like, hey, we still have grain, we still have whatever. So if Russia, you want to buy grain, it's going to cost you, about $1 trillion a pound, because that's how much we need to be able to rebuild the country that you destroyed. So you want to eat, you're going to have to give us a lot of money. Good luck with that.
All Russia can do now is give up, resign, and ask all the world, like for Marshall Plan in 1945, something to help Russia, to rebuild Russia, and so on. And that's only their salvation. Because this time there will be no longer help from U.S. once the war is over. Yes, U.S. will help to rebuild Ukraine most likely, but it's not going to touch Russia. It will become
Well, only time will tell. We'll be talking. Let's go quickly to we welcome Kimberly Calhoun. Always great to have a female perspective. Let's go to the elections real quick. So we've got, pretty much all seats in the House for grabs. All it takes is one seat in the United States Senate. If we bring out our crystal ball with only 4 weeks left to go, and if you're watching these elections from around the world, just for you to know, there is a lot at stake. Abortion, inflation, gas prices. We'll just go down the road. Kim, what do you think? What does your crystal ball tell you about what's going to happen in these midterms?
Well, I think the shakeup's going to probably happen as it always does, maybe just a week to a week and a half prior to the election. You're going to see something just happen really big, and it's going to shift the way people think and vote. This happens a lot. So I don't really have a crystal ball right now, because I think things are still kind of unbalanced. People are not sure how or why they want to vote. I think that, everyone is trying to do something right now, but honestly, I'm just tired of the negative campaigning. I know more skeletons in more of our campaigners' closets than I do in my own family. And I would love to hear what the campaigners are actually going to do for us, not what other people have done bad. So I'm hoping to see this shift happen. But, this is a good conversation, and we should, keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark Lee, what are your thoughts? What are you feeling? What are you seeing on the ground down there in Durham? Hello, Mark. You're muted.
Well, like I said, and I agree with you.
I can't hear him.
Definitely, a lot of this negative campaigning kind of what. Oh, I'm not muted. You said I'm muted?
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Y'all cannot hear me?
You're choppy.
Well, okay, go to the next person, and I'll come back out in the end.
Nick, what are your take?
Go out in the end, and I'll come back.
Okay. Nick, what's your take about these elections? What's your crystal ball telling you?
Crystal ball says there is actually a lot of negative.
Yeah, it might be where I'm at over here.
Mark, you got
There's a lot of negative campaigning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine, Nick. You're fine, Nick. You're just
a lot of negative campaigning. A lot of what they call ad hominem arguments. In other words, and it's from both parties. This person's bad because he talks about defending criminals. I mean, are you kidding me? This person's bad because They and some of these are totally not factually true on both sides, by the way.
Right.
These politicians are now engaged, not you, Steve, but your fellow politicians, in a massive campaign of lying on both sides, and they're getting away with it. They can lie, they can slander, they can defame. They don't talk about any of the issues, and it's America at its worst, and it's called politicians, not you, Steve. But your brothers are absolutely pigs. And part of the reason why is studies were done that people don't like negative campaigns. However, they will vote against people that have been smeared. So because of that, you have a lot of negative campaigning and not a lot on the issues. And it's disgusting. With all that being said, the Republicans will take the Senate. And I'm not sure if they're going to take the House or not, but it's going to be pretty close. But
Could be like 1994 gridlock government.
Yeah, you're going to have a gridlock.
Not the gridlock again.
Yeah.
Not the gridlock again. We don't need the gridlock. And I got rid of some of the things. So hopefully y'all can hear me. But I definitely feel that a lot of things are going there. And I'm definitely frustrated by the negative campaigns. I know that I will oftentimes have my TV on. And if I'm seeing and if I hear another thing that is brought up that has really nothing to do with the issues, because I know there are a couple of campaigns that I've heard where they're talking about what the ex-husband did in a divorce settlement. And I'm going like, does this really have anything to do with the actual position that you are going for? And they're bringing up, as you put it, Nick, all of this dirt and all of this other things that have nothing to do with what they are running for. I wish that they would spend more time actually concentrating on the issues and actually talking about the issues and not bringing up some of this stuff that is very irrelevant to whatever office they are running for. And I've definitely seen that here in North Carolina and get very frustrating.
Well, and Mark, and I've told people this before. This is part of the instructional part of this program. Here's what you look at when you look at these different ads. Specifically, there's real small print, and it's really going to be tough to see. So you may have to look at. This is something else. Sorry about that, Mark. It's I'm going to bring that up later. But basically, you have these little dates, like candidate X. They said that they're against abortion, or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you see this like little date at the bottom, like source, blah, 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 blah. Look at the date. Some of those dates are 04, 07. Right. You know, we're talking 15 years ago. I mean, they may have said that 15 years ago, but what do they say now? What do they say in 2022? So I think a lot of times the source is really small and you really have to look at it. But basically, and Nick, I don't think that people are lying. I think what they're doing is they are using hyperbole and emotion to be able to get people, to be able to sit there and say, oh, this is what's going on. I mean, this one candidate, sold his seed company. It's his seed company. If he's got a company, he can sell it. That's okay. That's called entrepreneurship. He hurt all these other people. Sorry, but people can sell companies, and people have sold companies in the past. So, I mean, all these areas they point out as being, this person doesn't care about anybody else but them. If I'm a business person, I care about my business and I care about making money. And if I'm not making money, I'm going to sell my business, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, I'm not going to, if you pay into the system, that's the way it goes. So yeah, that's what I think people should be doing, is looking at these areas. But yeah, you're right, Nick. They put, music behind it, little bits.
Chris, I did some research on that.
But who looks at the issues really? I mean, all this kind of crazy campaigning.
In that particular case, what happened was that he lent $10 million to that company. Then 8 months prior to filing bankruptcy, he got his $8 million back. What they did is, that's the reason I'm saying it's basically a lie. And they go, well, he stole from all the farmers, blah, 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 blah. Now, that was a Democratic lie, Steve. Okay? Democratic defamation. It was just, it's bad, it's wrong. Yet, we have to blame the media for running ads like this. There was no betting.
But Nick, does anybody actually do defamation?
Right. Money. The media gets money.
Does anybody actually do defamation claims and actually win them?
And the thing is, and they both point the fingers at each other, but it's a complete bloody lie. So all you have to do is fact check that. a Democratic lie. And then you go on the Republican side. You see the same thing. In other words, they say this guy Wiley, who's a defense attorney,
Yeah.
criminals. Oh, he's a criminal because he defends. Well, that's his job. I mean, in other words, like one guy said, everybody's entitled to defense. It doesn't make him a criminal. It's a complete Republican lie.
What do you think about the nickel race? I'm an advisor on this campaign. Do you think he's going to win?
In this country, I have no idea. We should be as unaffiliated. Neither one of these parties are worth affiliating with. Mark the box, I'm unaffiliated, and be independent and stay away from these stupid parties.
But people love their parties and people love going to their parties and all of that. But definitely, I've seen some candidates that have parties that they are going. And I saw that actually Courtney Gills, I think, is running for David Price's seat, and she's actually doing a comedy event. So, some of these ads are comic enough, but we're going to have a comedy event at one of our local bars for Courtney Gills. And I actually just got an email about that. I think that's actually taking place next week. So I'm going which is the better comedy show, the comedians in the Congress or the comedians that exist on this comedy show? And sometimes I think it's the political comedians that might be better and all of that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this comedy show fundraiser and all in that space. But I do have a quick question to kind of to divert really quickly, and I think that Steve may enjoy this. When did it become illegal and I'm hoping that the person is recovering well and everything, but these police are actually getting ridiculous because apparently there was a youngster, and no, he was not a minority, best I can tell, but he got shot because he was wielding a burger. That's right, he had a burger in his hand when the police came. I do not know how you mistake a burger for a gun. So please explain this to me, because this case came around, I believe it was over the weekend. And yes, he was being pulled over because he was in a car that was suspected to be similar to a car that was being used in the crime and all that. So I get the police actually wanting to approach the youth, but after they approach him, I've seen the picture, it looks like a burger.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, he said, get out of the car. As soon as he saw whatever he saw, the burger or whatever it was, he backed away, pulled his weapon. The kid shut the door and started to move the car.
Right.
So he said, stop, stop, stop. I'm sorry, Mark, I get it. And the guy was fired anyway. So he's gone. They're going to I'm sure they'll bring a civil suit. I'm sure that they'll make $1 gazillion off of this thing. Well, and I feel bad for the kid because he was shot. But the bottom line is this, is that if the officer tells you to get out of the car and he has his hand on his weapon, I'm getting out of the car. I realize that Nick is sitting back going, hey, you shouldn't do that. Maybe I'm not going to hey, look, if you have it. There was one time, and I told you this, I was in Baltimore one time and I was running. I was just jogging, right? I was minding my own business. I was just jogging. All of a sudden, this police helicopter, I can hear it. And it's like, there were police helicopters all the time. Baltimore County, it was a big deal. All of a sudden, this thing I start making a left turn. I still hear the helicopter. I'm going up these streets. The helicopter's right behind me. I mean, literally right behind me. And I'm going up, and all of a sudden, I stop in my driveway. I pull off my cap, I put my head up, and I put my hands up. And the helicopter sat there and hovered for about a good 15, 20 seconds. And I stood there, and then it went off. You know what?
And then it went off.
I wasn't going
and Chris, that is one of the number one. And that is one of the number one lessons. It was a bank
robbery up the street. So
that is the number one lesson for the police. I mean, if you look at it, Chris, and this is one reason I shrugged my shoulders. It's pure lack of respect for the policemen in this country. You can't do that, okay? And if you do stuff like that, okay,
I do feel bad for him, Mark. I do. I feel horrible about that.
Here's when you do it. You do it once you're out of the situation, and then go hire a lawyer.
So let me tell you guys what it is. It is a lack of educating our children properly. We teach our kids it's okay to be hateful, disrespectful. Don't put up with it. Go away. And quite honestly, we don't teach them well enough when there's a gun aimed at you from a law enforcement. If you're standing up and they say get down on your knees, if you can't, you just put your hands up and go, I can't. But that most of it is generally probably those kids are high on drugs, drinking, under the influence, and they're scared. And we don't teach well enough that if you are doing these things, do not drive. Okay. And so that kid was on an influence of some, and if he wasn't, if he was just eating a burger, he should have just stayed put. But I told my kids, if you drink and drive or under the influence, don't be afraid to call me. Nowadays, don't be afraid to use an Uber. Okay. There should be no reason for that. But we do not teach our children, put your hands up, and like Nick says, get through that first arrest process,
right,
and call a lawyer. All right?
But Kimberly, hold on a second. Kimberly, hold on a second. Kimberly, hold on a second. There's an irony to what you're saying. There's two ironies. One is that you say we don't have those conversations. I can actually tell you that, because it actually came up in K-Pasta, that in the African American community and the Latin community, there is actually that conversation that is held regularly because of the whole driving while black and other things. So most mothers and most fathers, including my brother and others, will tell their young people, if you are approached by police, don't do anything that will get them to kind of confront you and everything. Yes, sir, no, sir, keep your hands in plain view and all of that. It's called the talk. And it's definitely something that's held in the minority community because of what happens with the police and all of that. And that is what they call it. They call it the talk that everybody's supposed to have with their kids that are of that age. So I think that it takes place more in the minority community than it does in other communities because of some of the incidents that have happened with the police force. And the other thing that was brought up in the article, and I kind of agree, and actually the reason I'm at HATAS, because there's a veterans group here meeting today and everything. They meet every second and fourth Tuesday. But there are a lot of people that are getting into the police force that are coming from the military background. And I get it. You want people that maybe have some ideas around authority and everything, but sometimes they bring a gung-ho attitude into their new job, and they don't need to have that gung-ho attitude. I think even Chris, who is the only veteran that's here on the show today and everything, would agree that sometimes the police that are coming in, they want to get a new job that would let them be gung-ho and kind of, I won't say trigger happy, but definitely bring some of that training that they had in the military to a civilian job. And you don't always need that in the civilian atmosphere and all of that. And by the way, no respect to Sasha, because Sasha was a veteran as well. It was a different army, but I just realized that Sasha is a veteran as well. Definitely want to be correct in what I am saying and all in that space.
The worst thing people can do is talk back to a person that has a gun in your face. And you know what? I did it once. But I was smart in the way I addressed it. But the best thing to do, especially if you're young, if you're under the influence, don't get in a car and drive. Call an Uber, call your parents, and deal with the consequences later. There were no consequences with me. If the kids were smart enough to call me and take care of the situation, they were taken care of. Okay. The next thing, the police need to be a little more thoughtful. But yes, Nick and I, we've had this conversation many times on this TV network. They are not hired because of their intelligence. Okay. They are, and Nick has pulled this article up one time. That's not why they're hired. They're not hired because of their intelligence. They're hired because they will get out there and do the job. Right. Now, do we need to train them to be? No, because too often law enforcement are killed, and they should not have to worry about that either. Right. Now, in every situation, again, this should be a public service announcement. Kids, an officer is talking to you, don't cop an attitude with them. Shut the F up, okay? I'm going to use that word, not all the way, but shut it up. Stop what you're doing. Look the officer in the eye. Don't look down. Look them in the eye and be honest with them. Officer, why have you pulled me over? If you need to arrest me, I want my phone call. Right. And see if you can get your phone call. Maybe we can change the laws a little bit and you can get the phone call before you have to get in the car with the officer. Don't fight. Don't wrestle. Don't think you're above the law, and don't think you have any exclusions.
And speaking of the law, so we're going to come
exercise your Sixth Amendment right. They come and you don't feel comfortable, ask that you would like to have an attorney present during questioning. Okay, and here's where they do a horrible job. First of all,
and Nick, there is an officer.
to ask for the
There-
Sixth Amendment.
There is
right.
an officer that I'm going to bring onto the
Number
show because he was
two,
on the veterans
what they
show.
do is they give all these people a pass. This guy got in his car and drove away. The media didn't say this was a bad idea, getting in his car and driving away.
Exactly.
The media is responsible. The media is responsible for not editorializing these incidents and showing the bad thing that the person did. They just don't do it. They ignore it. And I don't know why they do
I mean,
that.
we should have a class on that. What did this guy do that was stupid and wrong?
Yeah.
And
I
he,
mean,
should,
yeah, and
he should have never been shot, but he shouldn't be
But he shouldn't, Kim, he shouldn't have gotten his car and drove away. The media was responsible for not calling this guy out. They do it on every time you see one of these incidents. It's like they're innocent, and they're not. Okay. In other words, there were mistakes made on the other side, and they never address it.
And did he ever address why he just got in the car and drove away? Did he say?
No. And the media doesn't
So
say
there's
that
no
this is a bad. The media doesn't say that this is a mistake. You don't get in your car and drive away when you have a police officer pointing a gun at your face.
So now we've got all of this happening. This is going to happen over and over and over because kids are going to think, I can just drive away. I don't have to.
And if you have a problem with a police officer, the minute they come see you, they say, am I under arrest? No, I just have some questions for you. No problem. I'd like to exercise my Sixth Amendment right. I want an attorney present. That's all you do. And it stops everything. Now, you won't get education in that area because they don't want people to be educated in their Sixth Amendment rights. Okay, but I think it's horrible because the thing is, people don't even know that they have a right to counsel in this country. And if you get pulled over, just say, well, am I being arrested? Yes. Okay, I'm planning on arresting you. Great. I'd like an attorney present during any further questions. And it's over.
If you're a minor, demand your parents be there. Do not open your mouth to say anything else than I want my parents and I want an attorney. And then shut it.
And shut up.
Stop right there.
And I think to be fair, and this is really something nobody can understand. What a police I have a close relative who's a police officer in Texas, and nobody can understand what a police officer goes through unless you're in their shoes.
Right.
I think the bottom line is this: is that you have a certain now. This guy, I don't know what happened with this guy, Mark. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why he pulled the weapon right away. I've talked to police officers, a lot of police officers, and they go, I've served 20 years and I've never pulled my weapon. 20 years, I've never pulled my weapon. Never had to, because I was able to discuss in a reasonable fashion, even people that are drunk or whatever else, in a fight, in the middle of a fight. He walked in there, the two guys fighting, beating each other up. And he looked at him, put his gun away, never pulled out his gun, walked in, and he says, what are you doing? You should be ashamed of yourself. You're grown men. What are you doing? And the one guy started crying. He says, I'm really sorry. He told me a name and blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, turn around, put your hands. I'm going to have to take you in for fighting, and they, all right, please. The guy, so if you approach them in that manner, now I'm not saying it's going to happen all the time, but the bottom line is people are shocked about that. When they're approached,
they're very shocked. And Chris, the other situation that has come a couple of times is that there has been talk, and I've even heard it talked here in Durham about the fact that a lot of times police are not trained in how to deal with certain situations like domestic violence, like mental health. And like I said, the veterans, sometimes they're dealing with mental health issues. I'm not saying only the veterans, but other people. So they've been talking about putting together basically what amount to teams. So yes, the police are there to handle the police law enforcement, but you're bringing other people in with the call that can better address whatever the situation is, whether that's trained social workers, whether that's trained counselors or whatever, because a lot of times police are not trained in those aspects. I know Kimberly talked about High Point and what they've done in terms of helping people with domestic violence. I think it was High Point, but definitely it seems like that's something else that needs to be done, is that we need to have people either train the police in how to deal with. That's a lot to ask the police. At least have people that are coming on that know how to deal with those situations. But I don't know how people think about that or whether they agree with me that needs to happen, because a lot of times police are not trained in that space. And there is a police officer, I believe, from New York, because I met him on the veterans event that I'm trying to come this week.
As we segue, we're talking about law enforcement, and we'll come back to the election crystal ball every week and just sort of thing. But I think real quickly to get back to that, I think it's not looking good for Democrats, but I think those swing voters, and there's a lot can happen between now and 4 weeks. So let's just monitor the gas prices, inflation, and look at whether negative campaigning works. Because if it does, then I think the Republicans are running a lot more negative attacks. But will the abortion issues and those kinds of things be kind of the game changer, the Supreme Court cases? But let's get to the law, talk about opioid abuse. So last week I attended the People's Opioid Summit, which was a virtual event. There was an in-person event. Attorney General Stein, who I'm going to be bringing on the show, talked a little bit about, opioid abuse and how significant it is. I want to start with Sasha. I mean, right now the big thing is fentanyl, which is, killing a lot of people. They say the biggest area is when they go into prisons. When they get out, they're more likely to get into opioid. But is opioid abuse as much of a problem in Canada, Sasha?
Not that I'm aware of. Something new to me.
Why is it such a problem in the U.S., folks? I mean, I don't understand. It's continuing to get worse. More and more people dying of these drugs.
Pharmaceutical industry, and that is part of the problem. Is that some of these things, and I think Chris may even have statistics about it, are actually part of things that are legal to obtain, and that's why it becomes a problem, because it is sometimes, if it's not the actual drug itself, the substance is within drugs that are easy to obtain, and then you can just kind of like farm out whatever the ingredient is and all of that. So I think that that's part of the problem, is that a lot of these things are fairly easy to obtain. I was going to mention just really quickly, because me and Kimberly had talked about it, and this is not so much around the abuse, but on some people may say a positive news, other people may not say as much of a positive news, but there has been a big push, and it may become a campaign issue. Some people may even say it's a hotbed issue, that there is a push to legalize marijuana and some of the things around marijuana. And of course, we have a person on this network that regularly does a show around that, and he should be commended. And that's what me and Kim were talking about earlier, for the work that he has done in that area, because he was doing it before it was even popular, because he's been doing it for decades, that being Jeff Eichen, and what he has been doing, or Eichen, and that is what he has been doing in the space, using Weed Wednesday and even shows before he joined Pod TV, to actually be a pioneer in this field. So big shout out to Jeff, because like I said, Biden made that announcement that he's freeing all of these folks that are federal prisoners, and that's just something that Jeff has been pushing for decades, as far as I can tell, and all of that. So
I don't think he's freeing them. I don't think he's freeing them. I think he's pardoning them. So I think these are probably already people that have been released, that he's basically pardoning them. Now by pardon, a pardon does not exonerate them. A pardon basically says it's a presidential pardon, which means that, you reckon maybe expunge whatever else. Doesn't mean you're not guilty. It means you're pardoned. So basically that means that you can go ahead now. You can apply for jobs. You can even get into the military. You can do whatever. So and that's probably,
well, that's a huge step, though, being able to relive in the United States as a citizen, as opposed to having those rights taken away from you. And in fact, it did release about 10,000 prisoners, according to some articles. Now, I haven't dug deep and looked into the prison stats, but again, Biden is going to get all the credit for this, but Jeff has worked on this, and he's actually freed prisoners one at a time, because he's just one person, but he's gotten out there and he's beaten the streets and he's preached and he's spoken about why this was not a smart thing for our country to do. And I also want to address the opioid overdose issue. And everyone blames pharmaceutical, but I blame our insurance companies, because they'll deny us other things that we need to do, and drugs become the alternative. I see doctors do this all the time. They'll go, you need this procedure, but insurance is denying it, so we're going to prescribe you this drug. Okay, so it's not always pharmaceutical. It's not the doctor's fault. And I watched Josh Stein, love him, not really all the time, but I watched Josh Stein, blame doctors and blame pharmaceutical. But in reality, I believe it's our insurance companies, because they push it that way. And maybe they're in bed with the pharmaceutical companies. I don't know. That's just an opinion.
They want to jinx it.
That's not.
They're already calling him Governor Stein.
Investigate.
Sometimes I whether he's getting, they're getting a little too confident, but they're already talking about his, governors, moving to the governor's office and everything. So, we'll see.
So according to CBS News, there are no prisoners currently in prison as a result of solely federal marijuana crimes. So because that's CBS News. So I don't know if that's true or not.
I'm sorry, there are no what?
There are no
There's
prisoners,
no prisoners
right
in
now.
crime
Solely, there are no prisoners that are in prison solely for federal conviction of federal marijuana crime. So basically, there are no prisoners released at this point. But I guess to the point of, you know, the people that say, oh, this is wrong or whatever else. The whole reason for charging, in my estimations, and you guys are lawyers, some of you guys are lawyers, I'm not, but if I were a cop, I'd try to get the lower end person to fess up or go to prison. You know, hey, look, tell me who your dealer was, and, you know, we'll drop the charges, or tell me who your dealer was, and we'll get that down to a misdemeanor. You won't have to worry about that stuff or whatever else. And the people, you know, I'm not saying they do this, but some people might say, no, I'm not going to do that because the dealer will come after me, whatever else. I'm going to have a problem with that. Screw that, you know. So they end up going to prison. So you know, whether a federal conviction, you know, interestingly enough, Kim, and I'll tell you this: if you are caught speeding on a federal, on an Air Force base, and you're a civilian, you're there as a guest, whatever else, you know what that is? That's a federal conviction. You're federally convicted of driving on a federal installation and breaking federal law. So you have a federal conviction. If you're court-martialed, it's a federal conviction. You know, all these things end up to be really, I mean, they're hard to
Chris,
take.
just out of curiosity, if that happens, you go before your regular court, or do you go in front of JAG in that whole military court kind of situation if you are a civilian on that environment? So just
neither.
curious.
You go before a federal district court that has the base as part of its district responsibilities. It literally, a federal judge comes on the base. We used to have the trials for speeding believe it or not, in the movie theater. And the judge would be up on the stage of the movie theater, and people would come forward. And that's how many people were convicted in that area, you know, around Fort Meade, Maryland. And they would come up and they'd say, you know, do you contest? No, okay, you know, guilty, you know, pay your fine, you know, walk on.
Guilty.
And the
Pay
thing
the fine,
is,
keep it going.
That's right. So that's how they did it. So
hey, Steve, if I can just
I will add to those federal law crimes. A lot of people don't know this, and I wish they had done a lot of PSAs because so many kids got arrested for this on a federal level. But it is, you know, the telephone lines are federal. They're owned and governed by federal. And if you do anything by your phone, if you threaten someone by the phone, use foul language on the phone. If you, sexting, all of that is considered a federal offense, and you will be charged federally, not by state, not by city, but federally because of FCC, correct? But because all of the government, the federal government, owns and controls and regulates everything once it goes past this. We're actually in this.
Kim, I know we're winding down, and I know Steve's got to do his closeout. But speaking of regulations, you know, there's an industry that is very popular in North Carolina. It's actually one of our leading industries and all in that space. But a law in California may be impacting what goes on all the way over here in North Carolina, because apparently there is a California animal welfare measure that is banning the sales of pigs when breeding pigs are housed in confined spaces that prevent them from moving freely. And that's going to go under the microscope at the Supreme Court on Tuesday. And of course, that will definitely have an impact on various farmers throughout the country, including those here in North Carolina. So I was just wondering, do we need to give the pigs all these rights and all of that? I'm not talking about the police pigs that we were talking about earlier, because that is the nickname for them, but the actual pigs that go on and all of that. So I was just wondering your thoughts around that.
I gotta mute. I'm still laughing.
That's crazy.
Okay.
I don't know, guys.
What do you got, Steve?
Steve's got a wrap.
I guess it's time to close out. I'm going to close out a little bit early today, but first of all, I just want to. I'm not going to. I don't. If anyone wants to comment on that, I just wasn't prepared to answer that. But as we close out the show, we just want to. Mark, are we ready for closeout?
You're muted, Mark. Muted.
Mark, are we ready for closeout?
Let
Okay.
me unmute.
All right.
Let me unmute.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and close out the show today. It's been an honor being on this great show. We've had a wonderful discussion about all kinds of issues, ranging from the Ukraine war. We pray for Ukraine. We pray for anyone around the world that's suffering as we lift out of the pandemic. And we watch very closely the future of elections and the future of the United States. What's going to happen with Joe Biden and his party? Will the Democrats win the House and Senate? Will the Republicans win the House and Senate? Much to talk about as we continue this month. Reminder, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so make sure that you're going to Cybersecurity Awareness Month. The CISA, the organization, to learn about what you can do to be cyber secure. We also know it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to fight this terrible disease. And remember, it's also Hindu Heritage Month, and wherever you are in the world, if you practice Hinduism, you can learn about it Hindu Heritage Month on the websites. And in North Carolina, we are going to be having a big event at the state capitol, and hopefully be bringing a guest in to talk about when Hindu Heritage Month started. And speaking of Hindus, Tulsi Gabbard, interesting enough, former presidential candidate, U.S. Congresswoman, has just left the Democratic Party. So I think we see more of those moderates leaving the party, and what will that mean for her political future, whether she becomes an independent or Republican? Only time will tell. She is from Hawaii, and was the only Hindu right now up until the new ones, Raja Krishnamurti, Ami Bera, and Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal. So there's now 4 in the U.S. Congress. From our family to yours, we will let you go early today. I want to thank you all for being with us. And remember that on this show, we love to have collaborative, innovative, and productive discussions, although sometimes they could be turbulent. We didn't have Shaquille Latimer today, so it wasn't so much so. But thank you. Let the love and light of our hearts always lift us out of the darkness. Thank you all so much, and we look forward to seeing you soon, tomorrow.
Thing is and everything. I just tried it off. Hey, I forgot to end the show. Hold on one second. Don't say anything.